This is Horror Podcast.
Welcome to This is Horror, a podcast for readers, writers, and creators. I'm Michael David Wilson, and every episode alongside my co-host Bob Pastorella, we chat with the world's best writers about writing, life lessons, creativity, and much more. Today on This is Horror, for another special Daddy's Boy tangential episode, we'll be talking to Brian Asman, the man who described Daddy's Boy as slacker noir. It really gave me the genre that I'd desperately been searching to put Daddy's Boy in. Now, Brian is a writer, actor, and director from San Diego, California. He's the author of the forthcoming expanded edition of Man Fuck This House and Other Disasters, as well as The Good Dogs, Our Black Hearts Beat as One, I'm Not Even Supposed to Be Here Today, Neo Arcana, Nunchuck City, Jailbroke, and Return of the Living Elves. In this conversation, we're primarily talking about writing fearlessly and not giving a fuck, but there are a number of other topics and things that we get into. It's a great conversation, as it always is with Brian. But before we get to it, a quick advert break.
What if the end of the world didn't come with a bang, but with a breach? In the Infernal Age, Demongate, a failed experiment destroys all technology, killing millions, and opens a gateway to something far worse. Demons now roam the earth, and humanity's only hope lies in adapting to the ashes of a broken world. If you love the creeping dread of the mist, the poignant grit of the road, and the dark humor of the cabin in the woods, you'll feel right at home in this post-apocalyptic blend of horror and sci-fi. The Infernal Age, Demongate, is available now on Amazon, Audible, and bookshop.org. Step to the gate, if you dare. Are you still getting your book recommendations from TikTok? Why, when there's a book containing over 600 horror fiction recommendations written by someone who has read over 3,000 horror novels? That book is called Cracking Spines, 3 Decades of Horror by Jason Cavallero. Cracking Spines has over 30 chapters of ranked lists including Best Monster Novels, Best Folk Horror, Best Slasher Novels, and many more. Cracking Spines by Jason Cavallero is available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Okay, with that said, here it is. It is Brian Asman on This is Horror. Brian, welcome to This is Horror Podcast.
Hey, what's up, guys? Always good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. And I mean, this is for the kind of Daddy's Boy tangential podcast that we've got going on. And I have to firstly thank you for the amazing blurb that you gave for Daddy's Boy. And not only that, I found it tremendously difficult to put it in a genre, and you called it slacker noir. And I was like, that's it. This is what it is. So thank you so much.
Oh, of course. Yes, no worries. Yeah, it was a fun book for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's not for everyone. It's been divisive already, but it's good to have the endorsement from such an amazing writer as yourself, and someone who, you know, isn't afraid to push boundaries and to not give a fuck, which is kind of what we're going to be talking about today.
Excellent. Yeah.
And I mean, the last time that we spoke to you, in many ways, it seems like it was yesterday, but it was in fact over 6 months ago now. So Jesus, but what has been going on? How is 2025 going for you so far, both personally and professionally?
But let's leave aside the personal part of that right now. I'd rather focus on the positive. Yeah, so yeah, my personal life is a mess as it always is. That's just, par for the course there. Professionally, so I have I have the revised. I'm calling it the revised edition of Man Fuck This House (parentheses) and Other Disasters, coming out in October. So it's a revised version of the main narrative. We add a few more chapters to it, and then we also bundled it with additional short stories. So there's 6 short stories in there. So it's a pretty hefty tome, about 100,000 words. And if you're a fan of the original, you'll have to check this out just to see like all the new stuff that's been added, and of course those new short stories. But if you've never picked it up before, I hope this is the version that you'll give a chance.
Yeah, and in terms of the new short stories, I mean, how many of those kind of originals never been published, and what are we looking at in terms of, I suppose, the aesthetic and the spread of stories? Because I know that you write in very different modes, from almost the deadpan to the wacky, all out there, fuck me, Kevin Smith stand up.
Yeah, good question. So out of the 6 short stories, 4 are brand new, never been seen anywhere else. And of those, I think the tone varies a little bit. There are some stories that are a little more kind of gonzo, I guess you could say, kind of crazy. There are others that are a little bit more serious. There's one kind of supernatural police procedural thing I did, which is pretty serious. And then the story of the tire swing, which closes out the volume, it's kind of like thematically a mirror of Man Fuck This House a little bit, but it's like a dark mirror, so it's definitely a lot more brutal and a lot more straight. I'm playing it more straight in that one.
Yeah, and in terms of your aesthetic at the moment, I mean, we're talking about writing fearlessly, and I think linked in with that is almost writing things that are difficult to define. However, you may anticipate my question is, if you were to try to define what you're writing, what genre would you say you're in, or what new genre would you create to describe your own work?
I mean, I do consider myself a horror writer. So I think, and the beautiful thing about horror is it's such a broad, big tent that there are so many different things that classify as horror that can fit underneath it. So yeah, I still consider myself a horror writer. As far as subgenre, I mean, I've done some horror comedy, I've done some slasher stuff, I've done some creature feature stuff, I've done some more serious stuff. I don't know, man. I'm just me. It's kind of like Joe Lansdale. Joe Lansdale writes Joe Lansdale books. And I hope that I am on the road to one day people saying Brian Asman writes Brian Asman books.
Yeah, the more people we talk about when it comes to genre and writing these almost undefinable things, the more that they will just cite Joe Lansdale. Like, I feel maybe
Yeah.
we're getting to a point where there's a rejection of genre in general. It's like, what do you write? It's like, I write Brian Asman, motherfucker. What does Danger Slater write? He writes Danger Slater. What does
Yes.
John Basoff write? He writes John Basoff.
Yeah.
It'd get really weird if John Basoff wrote Danger Slater and Danger Slater wrote Brian Asman, but thus far, people are sticking to their own identities.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, I could see us doing something weird like that someday.
Yeah.
Like secretly writing a book under the other person's name and releasing it.
Yeah.
Yo, Danger, if you're listening, give me a holler. Let's talk about doing this. This would be really stupid. I love it.
Yeah. See, now my next book is going to be Danger Slater by Michael David Wilson, and I encourage Danger to write Michael David Wilson.
No, I'll write it. That's the thing. I'm going to write it, but it's going to be called Danger Slater by Michael David Wilson.
There you go.
That's how you do that shit.
Yeah, Danger Slater, the Michael David Wilson story by Bob Pastorella.
Yeah. And it's going to be a James Elroy pastiche, so yeah.
I'm actually excited to read that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. I'll probably just get Jordan Harper to do it, so yeah.
Oh my goodness. I mean, so As you said, there's so many different modes that you're writing in. Have you found having the bigger publisher and having your agent, are they trying to get you at all to kind of like, Brian, can you choose a mode, or are they just embracing this is who you are? Because obviously we've got the creative considerations, but there is usually some commercial considerations as well, particularly when you're with the big publishing houses.
Well, when you first come to prominence with a book called Man, Fuck This House, I think they know what they're getting in for. My agent, my editor at Blackstone, everyone has been wonderfully supportive. And they, I start at the very onset of my career, I really, drew a line in the sand and said, I want to write in different subgenres or different genres. I think I've told the story on here before, but I originally got my agent with a crime novel. So that's how she originally agreed to represent me, was on the strength of that novel. And then I was doing more horror stuff. And, when I like very early on, I was getting a master's at UCR Palm Desert. And I was working with Todd Goldberg, who primarily writes crime. He just had a book, The Low Desert, come out not too long ago. And then I was also working with Stephen Graham Jones, who writes, I would say he writes Stephen Graham Jones books, but also writes a lot of horror. And so I was like, man, I really want to do both these things. And so I established that pretty early on. And as far as what's been published so far, with Blackstone, we've had Good Dogs, which is a werewolf book, werewolf slasher. So that's definitely horror. Man, Fuck This House is definitely horror. Whatever comes next, I got some irons in the fire I can't talk about right now, but there is some genre bending that's going to happen in my career as it progresses.
Well, there's a little teaser and a reason to get you back on the show,
Yeah.
in due course when you can talk about it. But
Yeah, hopefully in the next, I don't know, couple months, I'll have something new to talk about.
yeah, and in terms of the new collection, so when did you say the release date is for that one?
It's October 7th, 2025.
Okay, there you go. You can come
Yeah.
back in October. We can talk about the collection. And as October is more than a few months after May, hopefully we can talk about all those other things too.
Yes. Yeah, I would love to. Thank you. And maybe there's always a chance, knock on wood, there might be some film news also at that time. That's continuing to progress. Can't say anything about it, but
Yeah, like we've mentioned this so many times, but Hollywood is such a kind of complicated beast, and the film industry, you kind of never know what's going to happen. Like you might get yes, 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 oh, no. Or you can get a series of yes, you can have silences, and then suddenly it's all go. So the only takeaway that I've discerned over years of conversation with people about the film industry is until you're watching your film on the big screen, just don't assume it's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. For me, at least, I have a film agent dealing with all of this for me, who's great. And so for me, it's kind of like a set it and forget it type thing. Where I'm like, whenever he gives me an update, I'm like, yes, that sounds awesome. And then I try not to think about the things that are going on with the various, film projects we're working on, until I get the next update, because otherwise, you're right. It takes forever. It's a very long, long process. And there are setbacks, and there are the silences that you mentioned and things like that. So you just gotta, just focus on writing the next thing.
Are the film agent and the literary agent connected at all, or do they have to kind of loop one another in? Because I see these days as well, more and more agencies, whilst they might have been separate in the past, they're kind of like more connected, and then also book deals might even have some things to do with film rights, so they're not as distinct as they once were.
Yeah, they're very connected. My literary agent actually introduced me to my film agent. They're longtime friends. So yeah.
Well, that's good. There's
I
no
just let them go and do their thing,
conflict, or yeah. If they were fighting each other, then
I mean, no. If there was any kind of conflict amongst the various people I work with, then obviously, I would deal with that. But no, I found it's been great. So.
And so onto the matter of writing fearlessly, would you say that you do write fearlessly? Are there any things that you are fearful of when writing or concerns that you have?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think my main fear is that I won't do the concept justice, because I generally am someone who I have a lot of faith in. When I decide to write something, I have a lot of faith in it, that it's a good idea and it will be very cool. And I just hope I can live up to making it as cool as I'm imagining it to be. Luckily, at least with the stuff I've published, I am super proud of everything, and everything is something that like I wouldn't change. Even though with Man Fuck This House, I got the opportunity to go back and like play around with it after it was published, which you don't usually get. But that way lies madness. But yeah, I am generally really. It's something I'm afraid of going into every project, but after it's out there, I'm always like, yeah, that's what I wanted it to be.
Yeah, I kind of understand what you're saying about not wanting to change things, but then because you're given an opportunity, changing some things in the sense that Bob and I, we wrote They're Watching together.
Mhm.
Great name for a main protagonist, Brian.
Yeah,
And
love that.
I'm so proud of what Bob and I did, but then when we wrote the screenplay, we obviously fucked around and we changed things. And I've said to Bob before, I wouldn't be against the idea of one day actually writing almost like the novelization of the screenplay. So then it would be
Yeah.
a different version. But in my brain, that doesn't replace the original. That's just like, here's an alternate version, here's an alternate narrative. So I'm not changing the original. I'm adding an extra edition, a new version.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think when you're translating something from the page to film, obviously there's a lot of different considerations, and there are things that would work better as a film that won't work on the page for that story, or vice versa. And it's just an interesting way to look at your own story again. And it's not about second guessing yourself. It's about translating it to a new medium. But yeah, one of my favorite examples of this though is, have you guys ever read Tim Dorsey?
I haven't, no.
So he's kind of in the same universe as Carl Hyacin. He's a Florida crime writer. He writes like very, very cartoonish crime. He passed away last year, I believe, unfortunately. But in his first Surge Storms book, he killed off a bunch of characters. Spoiler alert. And in the second book, he decided to retcon them all back in because he like regretted killing them off, or it was like the third book or something like that. But eventually he was like, he was like, oh man, I actually kind of want to write more about those characters I killed. And he brought them back. It was amazing.
Yeah, I kind of think about, that a lot, in the sense that, for a number of my books, a lot of characters die. And it's like, if I
Yeah.
ever wrote sequels to these, what's going to happen? And maybe because of the exaggerated nature, particularly of stuff like House of Bad Memories and Daddy's Boy, I feel it wouldn't be kind of beyond the universe for them to have somehow survived, or to have just some ridiculous way that their body kind of got back together. It might even have to take a more fantastical turn. It's like, these two halves of the decapitated body and how they
Exactly. I mean, you know what you could do, honestly? You could just start your next book with two simple words. Just kidding.
April Fools.
Yeah,
April
exactly.
Fools.
Exactly.
You can do it like they did in Beer Fest when Landfill died. And then I don't know if you ever seen the movie Beer Fest, but one of the guys, one of the competitors, Landfill, he drowned in a vat of beer. And it was really sad, and the guys were all ready to be prepared and everything. And this was going to set them back a notch. And then they met Landfill's cousin, who was played by the same actor who played Landfill, who could drink as much beer as Landfill, and said, "You guys can even call me Landfill." It's like, this is the way you do it. Of course, Broken Lizard, yeah, but those guys are insane.
Yeah.
Like this is the way you fucking do it.
You know, you guys should do something for the podcast where, like, Bob, you fake your own death, and then it's really sad. And then 2 weeks later, Michael's like, and now introducing my new co-host, Rob Pastorella.
I'd be like, hey, yeah, I look just like Bob. And then y'all, if you want, y'all can actually just call me Bob.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be kind of weird though, and I'd probably get canceled. But yeah.
What are you gonna do? You know, you guys have a Patreon. You're cancel proof. It's, you don't have to worry about any of that garbage.
I'll keep all the money from the GoFundMe. But
yeah, exactly. for Bob's. Oh no! But then you kill off your doppelganger. And you do a GoFundMe for that, right? And so you're trying to raise $100,000 for Rob Pastorella's funeral. There we go.
Then Rob is replaced by Robert Pastorella. And, by the time Robert Pastorella dies, well, we can go back to Bob again. People
you got like Job Pastorella, and like I'm trying to think of other,
Be Tob Pastorella.
Oh, yeah. It's like what's even a name? And you're like, I'm from East Texas, motherfucker. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm even more East Texas than he was. I'm Tob.
Tob Pastorella.
Yeah, I appreciate the commitment to the bit that you're just going to vary your Texan accent very, very slightly, depending on what.
I actually varied it quite a bit in the last bit I just said. That was actually, I don't even, do I sound that way?
No, you don't. Okay, that was a big variance.
Good Lord. Yeah. I was like, man, I thought I really was, kind of slathering it on there. And you're like, well, you made a subtle change.
You know what you should actually do is like you should do like the Texan guy from The Simpsons, like the Texas oil baron, and like you should drop in a sound effect where anytime Bob says anything at the end of the sentence, you add in like pistol shooting. That'd be amazing.
We could definitely do that, but it sounds like a lot of effort editing on my end. But it's definitely possible.
Well, things that are worth doing aren't always easy, but I think it could take your podcast to the next level.
Well,
this is true.
There you go. If that's what you think, then I'd be a fool not to do it.
Yeah. All right. We can stop with my consulting session on your podcast in all the ways that your lack of gunshot sound effects disappoint me constantly.
Yeah, I mean, you've never suggested anything that would be a bad idea. I mean, your main marketing strategy for me is to get like a series of tattoos based on the amount of sales that my book makes. So progressively weirder.
Right. I still maintain that's a good idea.
But back to the worry about not doing a concept justice. I mean, are there any concepts or ideas that you've had that you've put on the back burner because you feel that at this point, you can't quite see the vision in terms of executing that fully?
Yes, honestly, dozens of things that I've, kind of touched on, been like, okay, as I'm trying to figure out my next book, it's like, I have this long list of ideas and going like, okay, what's the right book for my audience? What's the right book for me? What's going to work right now? And I have so many different ideas. And the thing is like trying to figure out like what, is this a premise or is this a story? And what do I have to do to turn this premise into a story? Like, it's like, oh, like there's a world where everyone's hot dog yells at them before they eat it, right? That's like a premise. It's a very terrible premise, but feel free to steal it. I don't know, man. There's a world where ghosts are all very slimy or something like that, and that's Ghostbusters. Shit, I don't know. But you guys know what I mean, right? It's like, what's the story within that premise?
Yeah, usually you got to have a character. For me, I got to have a character kind of latch onto an idea.
Yeah, exactly.
In other words, like they want to talk about it, and so that's like, because I mean, ideas are a dime a dozen. I get a ton of them.
Yeah,
but they're not stories, and so to me, the only way I can even get any type of impetus is I got to have somebody who I can hear them thinking of the story. Like, for example, I'm working on one right now that I'm trying to decide if I want to make it dystopian or not, where I got to transport somebody across Texas. Okay. And this person is, for want of a better word, is a mage. And so this is obviously going to be from the driver's point of view. And so for the most part, and I'd like to keep it that way because I want to kind of keep some things secret. So I got to have this driver. So who's going to drive somebody? Why would this be a problem? In other words, why? So you got to look at all those things. It's like, okay, so all I have is an idea, but obviously this is going to be dangerous. So why? Why is it dangerous? Right. That's where your character's going to come into play. Maybe the character's done something to where he can't travel. Maybe the people he's going to see that they're going to pay him a lot of money to actually want to kill him, and he can't say anything about it. So there's like a ton of other ideas that start to gel with this kind of thing. Until I got somebody who says, I'll drive that car, then I don't, all I have are ideas. I just keep writing them down and tweaking them and watching stuff that kind of makes me think about that, or read stuff that makes me think about that. And then someday I'll be like cutting the grass or taking a shower, and that voice will just pop in my head, and I'll be like, oh, okay, there you go. And that's what's going to get me off to the races. That's usually what happens every time.
Yeah, totally. I think you can start like that, where you just have like an image, right? Like in your case, like a mage being driven across Texas, or whatever. You start with that image in your head. You're like, okay, let me. What's going on in this scene, right? How do I fill this out? What happened before? What's going to happen after? And I've had several books that kind of started like that. My unpublished crime novel that I mentioned, how I got my agent. That started with a single scene of like a kid passed out on a front lawn with like a sprinkler going over him, and like someone standing over him with a gun, And so then that was just the first scene in my head, and that just kind of like went in both directions from there. And hopefully that one we'll be able to sell that one someday, because I really love that thing.
Yeah, is that a book that you're kind of reworking at the moment, or are you trying to sell it as is?
More as is, but it's kind of just kind of like it's one of several things we have going on right now. So given that my career has been more horror so far, that's kind of more what I'm leaning into right now. But again, I look at Joe Lansdale, I look at like Laird Barron, who did like a decade and a half of horror, and then crossed over into crime with Blood Standard, and a number of other authors that kind of bounce back and forth. And so I'm hoping I can be one of those someday.
Yeah, so in terms of the logistical considerations as to what is shopped when, is that more something you leave to your agent? You write the books, you present them, and it's like, right, well, it's up to you to decide the career path and the route and what avenue we go down.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you think of this as like a factory, like I'm in production, and I'm running all the machines, and I'm turning all the turbines by hand and doing all that stuff, and I've got a quota. I have deadlines, and I'm trying to crank these things out. And then my agent is more like the sales and marketing department, And so once things are out the door, I hope they're out in the world, because I'm not making these things for nothing. But also, like, it's just my job to be down here in the bowels of the factory, cranking out things. It's the loading dock is not my concern at that as much.
And so, how many novels do you have that are kind of ready to go? I'm wondering how ahead you are, if we're to continue the production line analogy at any one time.
I'm not. I mean, there's a couple things, but honestly, like I wish I was. I wish I had a bigger backlog than I do, but a lot of people, and it's is what it is right now.
So we're not talking some Josh Malerman kind of secret when he put out one novel and he's like, well, we got another 20 if you want to look at them.
I mean, I've probably got, I've got a good number of things that are unreleased, but there's reasons why they're unreleased, right? And I'd say other than the crime novel I mentioned, which I think is honestly pretty good to go, and I've gotten that feedback from several people who've read it. I feel like this is turning into me trying to sell my crime novel to some mysterious listener right now. But other than that, I have a bunch of books I've written that I think are all, they have potential, they have good things about them, but they would all require like a significant rewrite in order to be like my next book, for example. And right now, that meme of the guy walking with his girlfriend, and he's looking at the other woman walking past. I'm kind of like, I'm doing that with like all the new stuff I have in the pipeline, and then just trying to figure out like what's the best follow up. What's my audience really going to want to see? Are they going to see a reworked trunk novel? Well, maybe someday, yeah, because like I said, there are some good solid ideas there. But are they going to want something that's more new and contemporary as far as like what I'm pulling together right now? I think probably that's what I'll go with.
And for those who are working on projects and they kind of find that there's something holding them back, that's not meaning that they're writing fearlessly, they're not writing quite authentically. Maybe it's market concerns, maybe they have fear of perception from readers, from family members, I sometimes hear as a kind of objection. What would you say to those people, or how would you kind of encourage people to, I suppose, be bolder and to be more themselves with their writing?
I think the thing is, if you think back on what you've written and go, you know what, I really want to be proud of what I've written personally. Getting accolades from others is very nice. But if you're cranking out stuff that you don't think is the best thing you could have written, and people are complimenting you on it, like how satisfying is that compliment? So I'll give you one example. Excuse me. So with Man Fuck This House, not going to spoil it, but for anyone who's read it, there's a moment in the book where things shift dramatically. And, anyone who's read the book will know what I mean. Anyone who doesn't, there's this point in the book, like I said, things shift dramatically. And I had originally had a different idea there, a more, I don't know, traditional ending, I would say. And as I'm sitting there, I get this idea of what I really want to do. And I went back and forth on it a lot. I thought to myself, is this too much? Is this going to put people off? And well, according to Goodreads, it put off about 40% of people who pick up the book, but that's okay. I love you guys anyway. But at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? If I don't do this, if I don't write this idea I have, if I don't take this big swing, I don't think I'm going to look back as fondly on this book as I could, and maybe it does well, maybe people like it, but am I ever going to like be really proud of it? I don't know. So I went for it. I went for that swing, and I'm glad I did.
So it kind of comes down to this idea of, we often hear the cliche that people reject the shots that they didn't take. They not reject, regret the shots they didn't take. And so you got to take it. You got to take that hard left turn with your fiction. And, you say maybe 40% of people didn't like it, but then perhaps the other 60%, they were so glad that you went that way. And
and those 40% still felt moved to leave a review.
Right,
so
right.
Either way, I win.
There you go. And
I love those people too for taking the time to leave a review. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing to think about is too that I work with editors that I trust, right? And so when I have one of these big ideas, I have someone to bounce it off with. And sometimes they'll tell me, we might want to dial this down, or, dial it up even further. And so I think it's important. It also depends on where you are in your writing journey, right? So if you're just writing for yourself right now, then take those swings. Who cares? If you're thinking about self-publishing, find an editor, a good developmental editor that you trust and that you have a similar taste and you're on the same wavelength, and that person will really help you decide, am I going too far here? Am I not going far enough?
I think it makes good to mention also is that, and I've said this a lot, it helps to be polarizing. You kind of want to be polarizing. to me is if you're not polarizing, in other words, you got 40% of the people who took the time to leave a review that they didn't like your big swing on the book, right? So if you look at it like, well, that sounds like a negative number. No, it's actually not.
Yeah.
Because that means that someone who didn't like something took the time to it made a reaction. It caused a reaction. And what you don't want is your book to be out there and it gets no reaction at all.
Yeah.
And so, because trust me, no reaction is way worse than a negative reaction.
Like Oscar Wilde said, the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Like getting that reaction, positive or negative, I still made an impression on that person. And so I love anyone who takes the time to leave any feedback for my books. That helps me regardless tremendously.
Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go back and not do big swings on your next story or anything like that.
I don't read the reviews because I don't want to like incorporate like that into my, I don't want to try and write to an audience that didn't like my last book. That's a trap.
Right. But it's like to me, it's like you don't want somebody to read your book and then they don't even take the time to write anything about it or anything like that. And within 24 hours, they have forgotten that they have read your book. And that's probably the worst feeling that anyone could ever have. If your book had a feeling, it would be depressed. If your book had the ability to feel feelings, it'd be like, nobody even said anything, Wow, that's sad. You want to be polarizing, it's because when you are, people will talk about it. And then that's what you want. I have bought plenty of books based upon people's negative conception of a book. That has made me go 100%. I'm buying this fucking book.
Yeah, exactly. I see. So I belong to this self-publishing group on Facebook. And a lot of the time, like this is a regular kind of post is, I just got my first negative review. What do I do? And like everyone's like, generally most people give good advice and they're like, well, just be glad someone left you a review. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that your negative reviews, they validate your positive reviews. Think about that for a second. So if you have a book that has 1,000 ratings and they're all 5 stars, I don't believe that for a second. Like, you hired a bunch of bots to star your book for you is what I see there. Now, if I see a book that's, it's got like, 40% 5 stars and 40%, 20% 1 stars and 30% 3 stars or whatever, like, then I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. That seems like a book those seem like legitimate reviews.
Yeah. And it's like, also it's, you have to repeat this so often, especially on social media. 3 stars means it's good. That means they liked it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so it's like, it's like, well, it's only got 3-star rating. Fucking great. That's awesome. If I used a 4-star rating, if I wrote reviews and used a rating scheme, do you know how many books would get a 4-star rating? Not many, because most of them are 3s, which means they're pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
4 is like exceptionally good. I can think of one book right off the top of my head that it got a 4-star rating if I rated books, and that would have been Incidents Around the House. But a 3, shit, you're lucky if I give you a 3. That means I fucking remembered the book the next day. And that's, I don't want to be like, well, I read that. I don't remember anything about it. That's pretty shitty.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. Although I think for me, I find something to enjoy in everything I read. So most of the books I read are about 3 stars, I would say, if I were to be rating them, which, rate and review books, everyone. But, I try to do that as much as I can, but I also want to be honest. And so whenever I read a book that I don't think is at least 3 stars, I don't leave a review. Just because I don't want to, I see these people at conventions, I don't want to be like, I don't want to be that guy. They're like, oh man, you trashed my book online. And then it's like super awkward at the hotel bar or something,
Yeah.
And I also don't want to give the impression that I'm like just trashing other people's books for any reason. So I just talk about the stuff I like mainly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The moment that I started writing fiction more professionally and seriously, I completely gravitated away from writing reviews because, I mean, there was kind of a conflict of interest in the sense that, like, I found that there were so many writers that were very sensitive and took it very personally if I, even had some minor criticisms of the book. And then, they
Yeah.
might think I don't like them. And it's like, look, this was just an area that didn't quite work for me. Jesus Christ, it was still a good book. And even if it wasn't, it doesn't fucking matter because we're supposed to be friends. We're supposed to be above this. But yeah, a lot of people very, very sensitive about it. And also, I kind of wish the whole star system was removed
Yes.
because different people, like a 5-star from me or from either of you, they're going to be different because we have different levels as to, so it's kind
Yeah.
of meaningless. I just would prefer, let's have a paragraph as to what we thought of the story without the star. If you
Yeah.
can't attribute your own star from your own arbitrary system, then my words weren't good enough to convey how I felt about the book. But yeah, I don't
Mm.
know. It's difficult. I mean, Bob mentions Incidents Around the House. I thought it was one of the best books of last year, and I think it's kind of groundbreaking. It's brought together, like, it's created this new subgenre. I think it's going to be talked about for a very long time. I think saying that is enough. It's like, yeah, but Michael, you're going to give it 4 stars or 5 or 4.5. What does it fucking
What does
matter?
it matter? Yeah, exactly.
Who cares?
Yeah,
It's like,
I mean, reviews tell you things about the book. Stars don't tell you anything because you don't know, like you said, you don't know that person's personal taste. You don't even know what they consider to be a 3, 4, 5 star. There's some people that consider 3 stars a C. Bob considers that a good read. Like
yeah, and then some people consider a C to be a good grade. So
right,
even that, it's like,
Yeah.
what?
exactly.
Yeah.
Sounds like me with my report card trying to explain to my parents. I'm like, but C is average. That's okay. That's the minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was the same reason as Michael. Other than that, the only other thing was time. It's because it takes time away from doing the things that I need to do
Mm-hmm.
to further along my career. So it's like I don't have the time to come up with. I only wrote reviews about books that I really really enjoyed, and I didn't have the time to sit there and come up with different ways to say buy this book. And so, because that's pretty much what I was doing. I could have probably got a review published on This Is Hard going, buy this book, buy this book,
Yeah.
buy this book, buy this book, buy this book. And Michael would have said, hey, I'll do this one time and one time only. I'm gonna let you do this, but you're never doing it again. We just and then like do that and do a link to the book, buy this book.
You're not going to get away with that even one time. Let's put that on the record.
Yeah.
But see, I do take the time to find a book that I really, really like, and I preview the book because then I can hype all I want. I can get excited about something, and I can spread my excitement about a book that's going to be coming out.
Yeah.
And I love doing that. That's like, oh man, it's something that really, really fires me up because if I'm excited about it, then I can probably make you excited about it too.
Yep. Exactly. Hell yeah.
Yeah. I kind of like the preview section that we have of This Is Horror more than I did the reviews anyway, because, yeah, like you say, you're getting fired up, and it doesn't matter what. Yeah, reviews almost don't matter. Who cares whether I did or didn't like the book? Because if I didn't, then it just wasn't for me. That's the takeaway. Not that it necessarily wasn't a good book.
Yeah, and I mean, I like professional reviews because it's more than just I liked it or I didn't like it, right? It's deconstructing the book and what it's. I think a good review of a book understands what the book is trying to do and then reviews how well the book did that versus like whether the reviewer liked it. Right. So I think a professional reviewer can separate their own personal taste from judging a book based on how well it's doing the thing it needs to do. So, for example, if let's say that I'm just not like a big thriller person, right? But I'm a professional book reviewer, and the new Clive Cussler book, I don't know if he's still alive, but that comes across my desk, right? And I love reading. I love reading romances and historical fiction, but it's my job to review this book, right? Even though it's not my genre, I'm a professional, and so I will review that book based on how well he wrote this as a thriller, right? Because I have an understanding of the conventions of genre and the conventions of fiction.
Yeah, and to be honest, that was the way that I was approaching reviewing. But then I found writers took that even more personally, because if I'm saying you didn't, approach like this in quite the way that one would, then it's like, holy shit, now they're pissed off with me. There's a
So find somebody to
specific
get pissed
right.
off regardless. Don't read your own reviews unless you can handle it, people.
Right. That's a good takeaway. And I mean, you said that you don't read your own reviews. Did that take some discipline? Did it used to be that starting out you would read the reviews, or has that been a principle from the off?
I learned very quickly. So I think when I first started out, and when I say I don't read reviews, that's not entirely true. So if someone tags me in something on Instagram, for example, I tend to read that, but those tend to be positive, right? Early on, I would read with my first publication or so, I would read negative reviews and start getting mad and just want to just wish I could go give that person an earful, be like, you didn't fucking understand the book, okay? But I heard very quickly, and actually listening to this podcast, I think, listening to writers talk about this very subject, and clicked for me, oh yeah, I should just not read negative reviews. And I will read so if I have a review in a trade publication, for example, I will read that, right? And mostly because I'm scouring for what's the blurb going to be. And then, like I said, if someone tags me into something on Instagram, I totally read that usually, unless I start reading and it's negative, and then I'll just be like, okay, well, thank you anyway. I'll give them a like, and then I'll just back away slowly.
Yeah, you can't really take a lot of, I guess, I don't know, a lot of, I'm trying to think of the right word, a lot of stock in reviews. It's just, it's a lot of times it's some rando, who just they read your book, and I've read some negative reviews. I've read reviews from people that I know that didn't understand the review, not saying any names, but
yeah,
in Mojo Rising, in Mojo Rising, in the paperback, there is a last story. It is not even a chapter because all the other chapters are numbered and everything like that. And in Mojo Rising, they thought that this was the final story. Final chapter. And it's and the final chapter wasn't even related. And I found out later that it was actually a short story. I'm like, why are you even critiquing it then? Why did you even critique it? And at that point right there, I said, you know what? I'm not taking any stock in this at all. The only stock that I'm ever going to take in any type of review is if my name gets mentioned by Ellen Datlow.
Yep.
Which it has. So in a good way, not in a bad way. But yes. So yeah, and because here's the thing. Yes, it is an honor to be, chosen to be in the best horror, but it's also an honor to be mentioned with all pretty much all of your peers. If you publish something, if she liked it, she's going to call your name out. And it's if you're going to impress anybody, impress Ellen,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
when it comes to editors, of any genre, but especially horror fiction, there is none higher. That's the top right there. If you want to impress anybody, if you can impress Ellen, then hey, then the rest of it doesn't fucking matter.
Right, exactly. I completely agree. It's funny, that story that just reminded me. So in my novellas, I would typically include either a story by myself or someone else as a bonus item in the novella, just to flesh it out a little bit, give the readers a little more for their money. And one review knocked the star off of one of my books because, and I am paraphrasing here, but they basically said, the book includes a bonus short story. I really like the bonus short story, but it should have been published separately. And then I'm taking a star off for that. So literally, it takes all kinds, y'all. It takes all kinds. That was one of the funniest. Like I saw that and I was just like started laughing. Like I was just like.
It's so bizarre. It's like, if with the Resident Evil games, I got upset and knocked a star off because they included mercenaries as an amazing additional mini game. It's like this was too good.
Yeah,
You should have
yeah.
packaged that
Like,
as
no,
a different game, minus one.
this game should be separate. It shouldn't be a game within a game, guys. I'm not going to start with.
It's so bizarre. It's like you should be adding a star on. It should become a 6-star read because
the Silent Hill 2 remaster was 5 stars until I noticed that they actually remastered the entire first game for PS5. Taking off a star should have been separate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
It's be like, are you stupid? Yes. No, wait, don't answer the question. We already know the answer.
Yeah. The thing is, a couple years ago, I looked up the Goodreads rating for Moby Dick, which is widely considered to be the greatest American novel ever written. And I think it has like a 3.4 or a 3.5 on Goodreads, like average. That's when I looked at least. And so, yeah, like you have to remember that there is no pleasing everyone, and you don't want to please everyone. You want to develop and cultivate an audience. The people that like your book a lot will read more of your books. The people that thought your book was okay might still read more of your books. The people that hate it, they might also still read more of your books. Who knows?
You looking up the reviews for Moby Dick kind of reminds me of. So sometimes if I see a Goodreads review and a negative review and I feel a bit bad about it, I then go to that person's page and look at what else they've reviewed badly. And then I remember seeing stuff that they'd reviewed badly by Ryu Murakami and Paul Tremblay. And I thought, well, you're saying I'm on that level. So now I feel better again. It's
you're in good company, right?
If you give me 2 stars and Ryu Murakami 1, what I'm translating that as is MDW's book was so fucking good it was better than Ryu Murakami. That's the takeaway that I've got from that.
Exactly. And then you go look at their 5-star reviews and you see that they're all 5-star reviews only for coloring books, and you realize they're fucking stupid.
Yeah, I should have just in Daddy's Boy had some illustrative sausages that they got to color in. And got these stars for that.
It's like if you saw someone on Goodreads and they reviewed all the horror books that anyone would read, whether you liked them or not, and you looked and they gave every one of them a negative review. If I was one of their friends and they were showing me that, I'd be like, maybe horror is not your thing, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Have you tried something different?
Yeah. Yeah. Have you tried suspense? Have you tried thriller? Have you tried mystery?
Yeah. You didn't even like Rosemary's Baby. I mean, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Just maybe horror is not for you. Westerns, maybe. Louis L'Amour wrote a lot of books, buddy.
Yeah.
And they're all good.
Yeah, exactly. They'll keep you busy for a long time, man.
Long time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you said it kind of tongue-in-cheek, Bob, but I mean, I have noticed before that there are people that, primarily the genre that they like to review is not horror. So let's say it's kind of paranormal, romance, or fantasy, or SF. And then, obviously that they're trying to get into horror, or they keep accidentally picking up horror books, because then every review of a horror book is 1 or 2 stars. And then I wonder, do you just have an agenda against horror? Are you deliberately like, well, this wasn't paranormal romance? And it's like, well, I
don't know, man. It's like you have some people that, like, even professional reviewers. It's funny because I think we kind of touched on this a little bit. It's like that's how the term elevated horror came about. Is basically a reviewer who did not like horror.
Yeah.
It encountered something he liked, and it was like, well, I'm on the record. I can't let my peers down. So I'm going to say this is it's more than horror. It's elevated. It's higher up than horror. And it's like, dude, you don't even understand the genre that you're critiquing so damaged, so negatively.
Oh yeah.
And horror has been able to do this beyond its cautionary tales beginning. It's subtext. Hello, it's been there the whole time, and so even today, we still see people that, they can't wait to poke that stick. It's like, well, I can say it was elevated horror. It makes
every review of an A24 or Neon movie, basically, in like a major newspaper, begins with, "I don't usually like horror, but."
Yeah, you should not have reviewed this movie, but yeah,
and that's okay. But that's okay, and that's okay too. If someone doesn't usually like horror, and a movie from A24 or Neon gets them in the door, good for them, and hopefully that will open their mind a little bit and go, okay, maybe there are things about the genre that I do like. I think the people who don't like horror, I get like not wanting certain kinds of horror. I get not wanting to bathe in splatterpunk constantly or something like that. But I think most people that say they don't like horror are actually lying. And not lying necessarily, but they just don't. They do like horror, but they don't know enough about the genre to know that they do like it. Because I think everyone celebrates Halloween, right? Everyone gets into the Halloween spirit, at least in the States here, for the most part. And so people do like that stuff.
Well, it's like, I don't like slashers, but I understand that it is a major genre, and I'm not going to, just because my personal taste I don't particularly like them, doesn't mean that I'm going to demean that subgenre or anything like that. I think that these reviewers, if they wanted like, hey, every horror film I've seen up until this one has been bad. It's like, well, have you ever seen Darkness Falls? Because I don't think you've seen a bad horror movie.
Yeah.
Darkness Falls will really fool you, because the first 20 minutes of it before the actual movie starts is one of the scariest fucking things I've ever seen in my entire life. And then the movie starts, 20 years later is basically what happens. And it goes downhill severely from there. They could have just had the short film, the first, the cold open, that could have been a short film and it would have probably won awards. But, it's just, you haven't seen a bad movie yet. And then there's movies that are so bad that they're good.
Yeah.
It's like, so you got to be really, really careful. You don't want to go, hey, let's check out Life Force, because that movie is actually so bad it's good. And it's just a fucking classic now. So
yeah, dude, it's like naked space vampires. Come on, like I defy anyone not to enjoy that. I'm like, Oh, you think you've seen bad movies? Come back and talk to me when you've seen Robo Vampire.
Yeah.
Which is a Hong Kong RoboCop ripoff, where a drug dealer hires a wizard to summon hopping vampires to protect his drugs. And then they murder a DEA agent who is turned into like a tinfoil robot, and definitely it looks exactly like RoboCop. And then also like some other stuff happens in the movie I totally didn't understand.
I don't care how good or bad that movie was, but the writer was writing fearlessly.
Oh yes,
yeah.
Fear did not exist in that motherfucker's dojo. That's for sure.
No shit.
Fear does not exist, man.
See, and that's what I'm talking about right there. I want to see some of that crazy ass shit, man. That's where it stands out. It's like, have you ever seen that movie called Sushi Girl? Has any of y'all ever seen this movie? Okay,
Sushi Girl. Okay,
Sushi Girl. You need to look it up. It's got Tony Todd's in it. Okay, Mark Hamill is in this movie. Chewing up scenery like you ain't never seen. Mark Hamill, he's fat and he's got long hair. It's great. Okay. And it's about these guys who they screwed each other around on the deal and they're getting back together and they're eating sushi on a naked girl. That's all I'm going to tell you.
That sounds great.
They swung for the fences. It's one of my favorite movies. I love this movie. I wish I owned it. I had it on DVD and I don't have it no more. I don't know what happened to it. So I'm going to probably try to find it on Blu-ray somewhere. But shoot, dude, Tony Todd, Mark Hamill, you cannot go wrong.
Oh my God. So it is available on Blu-ray for $9.90 right now. So I'm probably going to grab a copy of that too. I've never even heard of this movie, but man, Mark Hamill's been in some weird shit. You guys have seen Guyver, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I got to see that in the theater like about a month or two ago, which was amazing. Yeah, watching that movie on the big screen, man, it's just like this fucked up Power Rangers. Like, it's so great when Mark Hamill it's so weird too, because they don't really understand what the CIA does in the movie. Like, I love movies like that where they don't really understand jobs. So, yeah.
I had to check it out. The last movie I saw at theaters was Sinners, which was really good. So,
nice.
Yeah, Sinners hasn't come to Japan yet, but I'm going to get on this sushi girl action, which my phrasing sounds like I'm going to do something completely different to watch the film.
Yeah. Dude, another one, talking about a Bananas movie. Michael, you may have heard of this one. It's a Japanese movie, Meatball Machine.
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
It's so good. You guys have to watch it. It is, if you like H.R. Geiger type, biomech type stuff, like, it is just amazing. And you're watching, you're like, wow, they're really doing this. And they have all these cool little touches of things that, like, I won't spoil anything, but you're just like, holy shit. Again, they're swinging for the fences right there.
Oh my God. Well, this is like linking into what I wanted to ask, which obviously we've been talking about your own writing, but what are some of the books and movies where you think this is fearless writing, and what are perhaps some of the takeaways that you got from them which you could apply to your own writing or others could apply to their creative works?
Ooh, that's a good question. So when I think about fearless storytelling, I do think that the movie Street Trash, the original 1987 version directed by James Murrow, that to me is kind of my North Star for fearless filmmaking, because it's a movie that is unapologetically gross and sleazy and in your face. But they have they take such care with the way that they've made it. I think I've actually talked about this on this podcast before. But you can tell that, like, despite the fact that it's a movie about hobos, like, melting down after drinking adulterated hooch, they really put a lot of effort into every level of the movie. For example, they recorded a song with with a minor character from the movie singing a song about himself, and that plays over the closing credits. Like, they just took all this, like, weird, like, we give such a shit about this. We really want to make this as amazing as we can, even though it's this ridiculous thing. So that'd be one. I love experimental fiction. Like House of Leaves, for example, I think is a great example of, like, having a vision and creating something that, like, for me at least, I didn't make it through on my first read. I had to go back to it when I was ready, essentially. And when I did, I was like, man, holy shit, this is so cool. Like, I love the idea of going, you know what? No, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell does the same thing, where it's like, no, I'm going to put a bunch of footnotes in the book, and I'm going to realize my personal vision here. And generally, like, that stuff doesn't usually fly, but you can make anything fly if you believe in it and do it well enough.
Yeah, I think that is the key takeaway. If you believe in it, it's like, kind of, if you play it straight, if you do it seriously, if you're just like, oh, whoa, this is a wacky concept, and then you treat it like that, then you're probably not going to be successful. But if you take the wacky concept and you're like, but I need to believe in this, I need to do this authentically, I need to do it as if it is a real thing, I think that's kind of the takeaway and the recipe for good writing and fearless writing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also think the TV series Cobra Kai is a great example of this. This is a world where the most important thing on the planet is children's karate, and they completely believe in it. In every scene, they're never ashamed of their premise. It's just completely earnest and ridiculous at the same time, and it works so well.
Yeah, I know there were a number of people who got really excited about Cobra Kai when it came out, but it's eluded me. But I don't know, just something about what you just said makes me now want to watch it. I think it's on Netflix.
It is, yeah. All 6 seasons are available on Netflix right now.
Oh my God, there's 6 of them? How have there been 6 already?
I keep telling you, man, it's amazing. You're watching this, like every time I'm watching this, I'm like, this movie shouldn't be this good, or this show should not be this good. It's ridiculous at how good this is, but I'm like, I'm getting teared up. I'm laughing when I'm in the room by myself. I'm sitting on the edge of my couch, like watching a karate match between two teenagers. Like it's like literally more important than anything that's ever happened in my life. That's for sure. So yeah, it's so good. I just can't even begin to tell you.
Absolutely sold.
Nice.
Well, what are you excited about at the moment? And that could be as broad as you want. That can be about like movies and books coming out. That can be about your own writing. That can be about your personal life. Maybe the personal life is just getting better, seeing as you said, it's the equivalent of a highway pile up. That wasn't the analogy that you used, but that was what I inferred from the opener.
Let me put it this way. Sometimes you hit rock bottom and God hands you a jackhammer. So no, just kidding. It's not that. I like to be very self-deprecating about my personal life because it is a bit of a shit show usually. And maybe one day I'll grow up and it won't be. Yeah. So what am I excited about right now? Well, San Diego Comic-Con's in a couple months. And so right now I'm trying to figure out my costume for that. So that's gonna be really cool. Like I said, my book comes out October 7th. Super excited for that. I have a number of short stories that are coming out I'm not sure when, but I'm super excited for them to come out when they do. And then obviously I have all this kind of I have a bunch of film stuff going on. And so I try, like I mentioned earlier, I try not to think about it too much. But I'm very excited for any updates on all that stuff because you never know, something could always hit and boom, off to the races.
And I wanted to ask too, I mean, all the success that you've had, particularly over the last couple of years, has that empowered you to write more fearlessly and to be more true to yourself? I mean, it's not as if before, with things like Nunchuck City, you weren't being fearless and you weren't being true. But I feel that maybe with success, you could become emboldened. But I could see the other way. If you've got publishers saying rein it in, it's a tricky thing to balance. I'm just wondering how it's affected your creative state.
That's a good question. Yeah. So I'll preface this by saying no one's told me to rein it in at all. So my publisher has been wonderfully supportive, and I will say though, I have experienced the opposite, right? I am less fearless as a writer now than I was a couple years ago. And my self-editor is really, it's become a louder voice in my head. And so as I approach new projects now, and I think with short stories, I can still be completely fearless, but I kind of came out of the Bizarro scene, right? Where anything goes in the Bizarro scene. And now having tasted a little bit of mainstream success, I'm less fearless now, and that sucks. But my imposter syndrome is here in full force right now, whispering in my ear constantly that I'm a fraud and that I'm not going to be able to follow up the Man Fuck This House re-release with anything that's worth reading. And that's just the truth of the situation. And so I try to just go back to the one thing that's most important to me, which is as long as I love what I'm writing, the other shit is gravy.
And how much do you find that you can believe that and have that to see you through? There's one thing to say, as long as I enjoy it and believe in it, then fuck everything else. But how, when you've got all these kind of demons, this self-talk, how do you make yourself believe it or live it or go on in spite of it?
I just think about, there's a chance I've already peaked. That's a very real possibility, right? I could have had all the success I'm going to have. And I can't do anything about that other than write the best books possible, right? That's the only thing I can do. Alternatively, if this is just the beginning and I am destined for much more success, not that I really believe in destiny, but we'll avoid the philosophical conversation there. But if there is more success in my future, right, I'm going to get there the same way by writing the best books I can. So I can either fight against, like the futility of what I'm doing by writing the best books I can, or I can enable my future by writing the best books I can. But I don't think that there's any other option, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think as well, like it's always a dangerous game to worry that, you've peaked too early. And I mean, even with my own short career so far, like The Girl in the Video, my first book, that is the one that has been, the most successful in terms of sales.
Yeah.
But I can't, like, it wouldn't be healthy for me to think, oh well, that's it, that's as good as it's gonna get. Because I think too, I just say, like, but what if? Because we don't know. So I write because of the what if it isn't. What if this is the beginning? And to be honest, I don't believe The Girl in the Video is going to be the peak of my career. I think I'm just
Yeah.
getting started. I think I'm being more fearless in my writing and more true to myself. I mean, with House of Bad Memories and with Daddy's Boy, it's like really upping the ante. And there are some people who were into The Girl in the Video and they've bowed out with Daddy's Boy, but there are others who are like, oh, this is the real shit. So we just have to kind of write in spite of it. And I mean, if you look at Jack Palahniuk, obviously his first book, Fight Club, in terms of sales, in terms of notoriety, you would say, okay, that's the most successful. But then I don't think he peaked with it because he's just been doing more and more interesting things. And he's someone who doesn't give a fuck and writes fearlessly. He's just writing his own kind of experiments and his own challenges. He wanted to jump more into horror, so he's done that with the last 2 or 3 releases. And it's so, one thing I think about a lot is it's so funny how we can put the success of our book based on sales or based on who publishes it. And I think it's a very dangerous game. So if Daddy's Boy absolutely tanks and doesn't sell a lot, there's a temptation to say, okay, well, it wasn't successful. But then if somehow Zach Galifianakis picks it up and he posts about it, and then it sells like thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of copies, then it's a success. But either way, it's the same fucking book. So I
Yeah.
think that, I don't know, success is bizarre. And I think we need to almost put less stock in popularity, even though we're in a society that puts that on a pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, everyone gets to define what success looks like for them. And you can have different levels of success, right? You don't have to feel like you're a failure. You can feel like you're a success, and you can feel like you're more of a success, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, honestly, just publishing a book that's a success in and of itself, because, honestly, most statistics are made up. I think, 98% of statistics are made up on the spot. But, I've heard numbers like something like 90% of writers will never finish their book. And then, of the 10% that finish their book, only 1% will get it published or get an agent or whatever, and yada, yada, right? We've all seen those numbers here and there. So just, honestly, finishing a book is a huge success. That's just a win in and of itself. You're already in like the 90th percentile if you just finish a freaking book, and then from there, anything else is, it's cool. Like, I always talk about how when we did the short story challenge in 2017 with This Is Horror, I think everyone that I met through that challenge, pretty much, as long as they didn't drop off the radar, has gone on to publish something over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's just a short story or a couple short stories or a novella or a novel. Like, I think just about everyone involved with it published something somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't quit, and if you decide that I'm going to define my own success, it's not every book needs to sell 1 million copies. Not every writer needs to do that to feel like they're a success.
Yeah. The thing that, like, I have a book coming out in June. This book was written over 2 years ago. And so it takes a long time for a book to come out. And people think, well, you write a book and it comes out. No, it doesn't. This book was written 2 years ago, probably over 2 years ago. And what made me finish that book is the same thing that's going to make me finish my next book. And so even though I just got done with the edits on this book, and hopefully we'll have, some advanced reader copies going out here soon and a cover reveal because it's coming out in June. So I know this stuff is coming up. You still can't help the feel whenever you stare at a blank screen, imposter syndrome. It just fucking creeps up on you,
Yeah.
But here's the thing: I might have some struggles right now with ideas and what I want to work on because nothing seems to be gelling with me. But since then, I have also reading a fucking novella. So, I've got a home invasion cosmic horror novella. Those two things don't go together at fucking all. And so talk about writing fearlessly. I've got a chapter in this thing that made me nauseated. So,
hell yeah.
Yeah, if it can fuck me up,
You can fuck yourself up, then hell yeah.
Yeah. And so I wrote this novella. Now, could I take this thing and turn it into a novel? Sure, I can pad the fuck out of anything. It would probably lose its strength. So I'm putting it on my Patreon. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with it yet. It's given me an opportunity to edit. So I'm hopefully I'm either going to self-publish this or I'm going to find someone who's publishing novellas and send it to them and hope to God that they don't have nightmares and never, and decide that they don't want to deal with me anymore. So,
or they have nightmares and go, oh, we got to sign him immediately.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to hear. But I have got so many ideas that are swirling around in my head, yet I feel like you. It's like, fuck, man. Is this new book? Is this going to be it for me? My original novella that I had out, unfortunately, is out of print right now. So, Mojo Rising is not available. Will it come back? I'm sure it will one day, but sales dipped. We extended the contract multiple times. Very, very proud of the book. Very grateful for it to come out, but it's gone. The only thing that I have out right now are some short stories and a book that I wrote with my good friend Michael David Wilson called "They're Watching." It's available through This Is Horror. It's a great book. So, but I have my solo novel debut coming out, and so I've got a book coming out. I'm going to have a cover reveal probably within the next couple of weeks. And I am still like going, fuck, is this it? Is it? And no, I don't want it to be it. I'm in June, I'm going to be 58 years old. And I don't feel that. And as long as I don't feel it, that I'm just getting fucking warmed up. And so I'm going to continue to write fearlessly. I'm going to continue to do what I need to do. And I'm going to fight these demons with everything that I have. The thing is that these demons, they fight back. You just got to realize that it's, you're never going to get rid of them. You just got to find a way to push them back down.
Yeah. Well said, Bob. I like that.
Yeah. And for whatever it's worth, I would say that all three of us, we have absolutely not peaked. I don't believe that for a second. I know the ideas that we have and the passion, the enthusiasm, the quality of writing. We haven't peaked. There's a lot of good things coming. That is for sure. Like if you two doubt that, then I have enough confidence in all three of us for a lot of us. So don't you worry.
Yep, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And if you think about artists who never really got to saw their vision, like someone like Robert E. Howard, for example, like how much would that fucking blow his mind to see Conan the Barbarian on the big screen, for example, and just to see the extraordinary resonance all his stories have had, like for the last 100 freaking years, with no signs of slowing down, really. Or John Kennedy O'Toole, who wrote A Confederacy of Dunces, which, Michael, I'd imagine that's probably on your shelf of books that you've read several times, as it is on mine, just from the way you write. But
Yeah, yeah, and that one keeps coming up when we discuss Daddy's Boy. People keep mentioning it, yeah.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah, but I mean, he never his mother published his book after he died, and so he will never know that he wrote what some consider to be the best comic novel of the 20th century. And
Yeah.
that's you think about stuff like that, and then you go, what, there's always hope. It's never too late. You don't even have to be alive anymore to have success.
I know. I know. I think about that a lot, and I think about Edgar Allan Poe, and
Oh my
I
God,
mean,
yeah.
God, I hope though, and because we're starting relatively young, I hope that we will get to see some of the success. But if we don't, we don't. But I ideally buy my books now. Don't wait for me to die. Just be like, oh, but when he's dead, they might collect them all together, so we'll save a bit of money there. No,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know
The
if that's what you're
MDW
worried about. I'll give you a
omnibus.
couple of dollars off anyway now. So, write to me, Michael at thisishorror.co.uk. Subject line coupon code after you're dead. And then I'll find out a way to give you a discount if you buy all four now.
If you pass before me, I'm gonna have to do the ad on there to MDW Omnibus. The girl in the video watching your daddy all in one big tome.
The girl in the video watching your daddy. That is something you can find on a different site. This is horror, that's for sure.
And don't forget, though, if he does pass before you, Bob, you do have to introduce a new co-host called like Marcus Daniel Wilson or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Michael Daniel Wilson. Here's Mark David Wilson.
Well, on that note.
On that note, yeah, this is getting kind of morbid. I love it.
Yeah. Where can our listeners and viewers connect with you? Where's the best place to reach you these days?
Sure. So I'm on my website is brianasmanbooks.com. You can always message me there or sign up for my mailing list so you can find out updates. And sometimes I send out little previews of stuff I'm working on, coupon codes, stuff like that. Also, I'm on Facebook and Instagram at this point at the Brian Asman. I am no longer. I still have an account on Twitter, but I don't regularly use it anymore. Just because my tweets kept getting kind of buried by the algorithm and it just wasn't worth being on there anymore. So the main place I interact with people is Facebook and Instagram these days. So go check me there.
All right. Do you have any final thoughts to leave everyone with?
Yes, absolutely. So as you go forth, just think about, when you write fearlessly, because what's the alternative? Right? Right scared, right afraid. Well, we're all scared. We're all afraid. That's why we're writing horror in the first place. Right. And so I think you owe it to yourself as a writer to write the best goddamn thing that you can and not let that voice holding you back stop you from doing that.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. It's always great being here.
Thank you for listening to This Is Horror Podcast. If you enjoy the show and want to support us, then please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/This Is Horror. You'll get early bird access to each and every episode, and you can submit questions to the interviewee. You'll also automatically become a member of the This Is Horror Discord. And every year, there are bonus episodes for patrons only, such as Story Unboxed, the horror podcast on the craft of writing, in which Bob and I, and sometimes a special guest, will dissect a short story or film and let you know writing lessons and takeaways to improve your own writing. Another great way to support us is to leave us a review on the Apple Podcast app or website. And if you want to watch the video version of the This Is Horror podcast, join us on YouTube, youtube.com/@thisishorrorpodcast. You can subscribe there and get notified every time there is a new video. And however you support us, I thank you in advance. Okay, before I wrap up, a quick advert break.
Are you still getting your book recommendations from TikTok? Why, when there is a book containing over 600 horror fiction recommendations written by someone who has read over 3,000 horror novels? That book is called Cracking Spines, 3 Decades of Horror by Jason Cavallero. Cracking Spines has over 30 chapters of ranked lists including Best Monster Novels, Best Folk Horror, Best Slasher Novels, and many more. Cracking Spines by Jason Cavallero is available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. What if the end of the world didn't come with a bang, but with a breach? In the Infernal Age, Demogate, a failed experiment destroys all technology, killing millions, and opens a gateway to something far worse. Demons now roam the earth, and humanity's only hope lies in adapting to the ashes of a broken world. If you love the creeping dread of the mist, the poignant grit of the road, and the dark humor of the cabin in the woods, you'll feel right at home in this post-apocalyptic blend of horror and sci-fi. The Infernal Age, Demogate, is available now on Amazon, Audible, and bookshop.org. Step to the gate, if you dare.
Well, that is almost all we've got time for on This Is Horror. But before I go, another thank you for all the support you're giving to Daddy's Boy. And I got an amazing review on Goodreads from my good friend John Crinan. I don't even know where to start with this one. I mean, I'll just read you a few key sentences. Daddy's Boy is a delightfully puerile caper with a heart of gold. And although he has put the laughs front and centre here, rather than his trademark scares, this has all the signature elements we've come to expect from the host of This Is Horror. Unforgettable dialogue, sublime what the fuckery on almost every page, and a cast of characters all deserving of their own spin-off novels. And then I'll give you the conclusion. Genuinely laugh-out-loud funny, this book deserves to be at the very top of your to-be-read pile. You simply must experience the full frontal glory of that finale. 5 stars. Goddamn. JC, John Crinan. Thank you very much. And on that note, I'll see you in the next episode for another of the kind of month-long almost Daddy's Boy flavoured episodes. But until then, take care of yourselves, be good to one another, read horror, keep on writing, and have a great, great day.
This is Horror Podcast.